All right, summer is here. We are now less days away from college football than the days we have behind us, and things are starting to pick up for Michigan football on the recruiting trail and heading into the 2023 season. This is Hail to the Podcast, brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We cover Michigan athletics, football, basketball, baseball, you name it, over at michigan.rivals.com for the Rivals Network. I am joined today, as always, by our publisher, insider, intel master, Mr. Josh Henschke. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Allergies are kicking my rear
It's
end today.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
tis the season.
It was good. I was avoiding it like the last couple of weeks, and then these last few days, whew, just sneezing. My eyes are killing me. It's
I never used to get them at all. My wife's allergic to the entire planet. Like she went and did one of those tests where they poke you and whatever, and like literally grass, trees, whatever. Like she needs to move to the desert. But I always get it mixed up. Is it dogwood or dagwood trees? They're like white and fluffy or whatever.
There's both. They're both trees.
Okay. I don't know which one it is, but they're like really white and fluffy. Those things destroy me. But other than that, I usually do okay with allergies. But anyway, all right. So we're going to jump in today. We've got a lot of quarterback talk, current QB commit, future QB commit. We're going to get in a little bit more with recruiting. Talk about the edge position. There are a lot of names there and not a lot of spots. We've been getting a lot of questions regarding that, so we'll get into that as well. Give you guys fair warning. A lot of what we're going to talk about today, you would probably have already heard or known about if you were subscribed to Maize and Blue Review. So make sure head over to Michigan.Rivals and subscribe if you haven't already. Get access to our message board community, The Den, where Josh is posting a lot of his intel, and we're just having conversations about a lot of the things we're having. Otherwise, of course, keep listening to these podcasts on your streaming apps, like and subscribe on YouTube so you know when we go live. This show right now, we do live. So if you are watching live, make sure to jump in the comments section. We'll feel fine answering some questions, maybe adding them to our topics. So anyway, get that out of the way. Let's start talking QB recruiting. Jadyn Davis, obviously we talked about for a long time, 2024 commit. There has been some hubbub about a 2025 target that Josh, you for a while, a few weeks back said Cutter Boley from Kentucky felt like maybe the most likely commit for Michigan in the 2025 class. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you want to jump into the timeline or whatever, do it. I'm going to put you on a tee though. Things have moved quickly with Boley, right? He schedules an official visit with Kentucky, which he's only allowed to do if the NCAA approves it. Right. They did because he's academically a junior. 2024 reclass talk comes up. And then we had this weekend, and now Boley's committing rather quickly, and all signs are pointing to Kentucky. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's coming down to, him reclassifying. I mean, I think, it obviously hasn't happened yet. So, maybe he is a 2025 commit for Kentucky, this week, but down the line, he makes the reclassification move to 2024. But, again, all rumors have been pointing to him reclassifying. And really at this point, if he doesn't do it, it's going to come as a big surprise, at least to me. But yeah, I think, Michigan had a great shot throughout this entire, this entire recruitment process. And I think if Jadyn Davis weren't in the picture, I think this would have been Michigan's recruitment to lose. He had a really, really good relationship with Jim Harbaugh. That translated over to Kirk Campbell, like we talked about last week, who continues to recruit the position well. But yeah, I mean, at this point, Michigan has made it abundantly clear to, not only Davis family and Davis, that he's going to be the only quarterback recruit in the 2024 class. But,
and let's clarify something real quick. Michigan has made that clear to Davis, not the other way around.
Right. No,
right? This isn't anything to do with the Davises or the Davis family. Right. And we'll talk about this when we get to the 2025 stuff. Michigan has said, hey, you're our QB. We pursued you heavily for 18 months. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So this is just Michigan taking care of the quarterback that they got.
Yeah. No, it's being proactive. And, I think the big thing is that, Michigan told Boley no in terms of reclassifying to 24. And so that pretty much does it. I mean, that's it. That's it. I mean, we all obviously know that Davis is QB1 in the class, but
we know now that Boley wants to commit and then reclass later.
Right.
That was another question. And
yeah,
that option can't exist. So
right.
if it's still an option, the answer is no, like you said, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's pretty abundantly clear now that, he's not going to be the 2025 quarterback. And that's pretty much it's cut and dry at this point. Jadyn Davis is QB1 in 24, and they're not going to make any, special, room for a guy like Boley. I mean, I think he's a very good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. However, you're not going to waste 18 months recruiting a kid like Jadyn Davis and then just totally screwing him over and pulling the rug from underneath him. That's not how you do things. I mean, that's how you get a reputation, and not a very good one.
Let's be clear. That's why Jadyn Davis is even at Michigan to begin with, because Ohio State lied, his words, not mine, lied to Jadyn Davis.
Yeah.
Took Dylan Raiola. He felt really spurned by that whole deal. Raiola is now at Georgia as of yesterday or 2 days ago, after flirting with being, going to Nebraska where he's a legacy commit. And now Michigan has Jadyn Davis, a guy that they wanted anyway. And whether you think this is real or not, he's got a chip on his shoulder already against Ohio State, very similar to JJ, right? So, and they already have one teammate committed, a legacy with Channing Goodwin. They're trying to get another teammate to commit. This recruiting class is an incredibly tight-knit group. We see it on Twitter. We've talked about this. They're all talking. They're all working together. They're all actively recruiting. You go out and burn your QB. That's not just Davis. That affects this whole class, man. You just don't do that, right? Yeah. So I do think Boley's a really good prospect. I think Davis is a really, really good prospect as well. We talked about this on the board a little bit. I think he's really, really good at the things that are hard to do, hard to teach, or cliche, can't teach, right? And the stuff he needs to work on, I think, can be taught. So having him, they needed to get, after missing on Moore, they had to get an elite QB in the 24 class. Yeah. Having him kind of takes some of the heat off at 25. But I wonder, that might be some of what's taken off the heat of Boley. I wonder if what we talked about last week, though, and what continues to be the case, again, like I said, it feels like every week, is Michigan's confidence in Bryce Underwood, who is clearly the number one QB target if Boley is indeed going to Kentucky. Does that make things a little bit easier for them and how they've handled this Boley conversation? Would they have maybe pushed harder to get him to not reclassify or even consider it? Or are they kind of like, hey, now that we were going for Boley because we didn't think we were going to get Underwood, now we feel better about Underwood. Is that playing into it at all? Where are they? We're resetting the 25 board, assuming Boley is going to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Is that part of it with Underwood?
I mean, it could. I think they've had to reset the quarterback board in 25 multiple times. I think, just putting Underwood back into the conversation kind of reset things. Because really you had Cutter Boley, Ryan Montgomery. I got it right this time. Ryan Montgomery, and now you loosely had Bryce Underwood in there, and now fast forward a couple of months later, things have shuffled around a little bit, and now you had, looks like Bryce Underwood number 1, Cutter Boley 2A, and then Ryan Montgomery 2B. So now you have to shuffle it again and say, okay, Bryce Underwood's still 1, and now where does everyone else fall underneath that? Obviously, like a guy like Ryan Montgomery is going to be number 2. I don't think Michigan is exactly settling if for some reason Bryce Underwood goes elsewhere. My dog agrees. That you're not settling for a guy like Montgomery. I think he's a very good quarterback in his own right, and I think that's what has Michigan in a really good spot right now, is that they're in a position, not just at the quarterback, where multiple positions, if they miss on a guy, their next option is not a guy that they're quote unquote settling for. It's a guy that is there in his own right. So that just speaks to kind of the hot streak that they've been on. So, to go back to the whole Underwood thing, I think all of those guys kind of live in their own little revolving world. I don't think anything really meshes. I mean, the only time I think really worlds collided was this whole Cutter Boley thing. Whether he was gonna reclassify and whether Michigan was interested in, even pursuing the thought of having two quarterbacks or whatever. I think really that's the only time you can have these worlds colliding. And I think all of these are separate to one another. Whatever happens, I mean, obviously that's it for quarterback recruiting. If they get a guy, I don't think, I'll be curious to see whether they actually want to hold out for a guy like Underwood. If a guy like Montgomery wants to commit, and I'm not saying he's close or he even wants to commit to Michigan, but more like a hypothetical. But yeah, I think all of this is separate of its own, and I don't think really one has to do with the other. But now, I mean, when looking at once Boley's off the board, Underwood's your clear cut number one guy. I mean, there's no question about it, and it should be that way. So I think, with Boley out of the picture, I just think things kind of the image sharpens a little bit and things become a little more clear as to where it's going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about, those three in particular, I think was the initial wave of Underwood, Boley, and then Montgomery, right? And it's kind of funny as everything's starting to settle down. It feels like all three are probably more likely to stay home than we ever thought, a year ago or whatever, right? So instead of, we thought it'd be really funny, they could all rotate where, Boley ends up at Michigan and Underwood's at Ohio State, whatever. Well, I mean, we'll still have to see, like you said, but Michigan's in on them. George McIntyre was another name we mentioned before. Stone Saunders is a high 4-star, maybe like a Cade McNamara type recruit. That's very vague description. I'm not trying, but like Antoine says, Michigan's system doesn't need that high caliber QB, but you like to have it.
Yeah. No.
Right. And you've opened this door now with the success you've had and with JJ McCarthy and getting Davis to commit. If McCarthy ends up being a first-round pick or a high NFL pick, something Michigan hasn't had in a very long time, you've built some momentum at QB recruiting that you can keep going for a while. And you just, as long as you can keep that going and you've got a guy like Underwood literally in your backyard, the goal is to get him, obviously, right? But like you said, I think it's interesting. QB and then the other position we've talked about a lot, 2024 edge, where Michigan's in new territory here where like they might have to tell a really good player no.
Yeah.
Right. I always talked about what elite recruiting is to me is with Bama and Georgia and some of these is when they're telling high 4-star recruits no. They're basically handpicking the guys that they want. So I don't know. I could drop a bunch of names here, but let's start. You think there's 3 spots available maybe? Right. We think Sullivan could come over. I don't know. But
yeah,
I mean, Nichols, Brandon Davis Swain came up today, a guy we haven't talked about a ton. Right. The other Smith brother. Right. Like, go ahead, man. Let's start dropping names and see if we can figure out where this edge board is at this point.
Yeah. I think, I think the edge position is looking very much like the offensive line right now where, they're a little crowded. And they can't take everyone that they're, that's out there. Like as you mentioned, Jacob Smith is out there who, is probably more than likely going to join his brother in Ann Arbor. It's not, I don't think it's a done deal or anything like that. But again, we've said it so many times. If you look at it from a historical perspective, it's not very often that, twins go elsewhere. They go separate ways.
Right. Brothers do. Twins are really rare.
Right. It's more likely that, if a sibling is 1 or 2 years older, that they do go separate ways. But, when you're talking about twins, it hardly ever works out that way where they go elsewhere. They usually end up at the same school. So, that's a guy. Dominic Nichols, we've heard that, Michigan is leading the way, or at least very near the top for him. And
he's one of my favorite.
Yeah, he's going to be a good fit.
It's a fit thing. Absolutely. He's a great fit. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike Elston is leading the way in that recruitment. And when Mike Elston usually gets a hold of a guy, it means he's really high on him and sees the potential there. And we all know how well Mike Elston develops defensive line prospects. So there's just so many names. I mean, even Elias Rudolph, who, he's a name that's there. I don't know. And I don't think Michigan is the school to get him quite yet, but they have a great shot. Michigan feels like they have a good shot for him too. So, and that's not even mentioning Ted Hammond, who they have committed right now, and Gerard Smith, who's an edge prospect, and Cole Sullivan, who could also be an 100%. Edge prospect. So, you have to look at numbers, and is you're looking at 2 for sure edges right now, with 2 for sure. Man, my dog is just going nuts. And 2 for sure, guys that Michigan sits in a really good spot for. So, do you go 5 guys in the edge too? I mean, you're already talking about a pretty loaded edge group to begin with, and you're going to add even more. It's interesting, but I think, and this is the beauty of Michigan recruiting so well, is that they're in a position to tell guys no. And, I think that's a good position to be in, because the guys they're telling no to are as talented, or, just a little less talented than the guys that the commitments that they would accept. So
I'm just curious though. Sorry. But I'm just curious though, when are they going to say no? Yeah. I'm a little, I don't know what term I want to use, but are they creating a race to the finish line here, where you're potentially going to have, this is a pretty locked in group. We just talked about that. There's not a lot of flip candidates in this 2024 class, right? So are you potentially creating a race where a guy might take a spot and commit because he knows he's high on Michigan? He doesn't want to pick Michigan too late and lose that spot. He comes in, you potentially tell someone else no, because the spot's gone, and then that guy flips on you, and now you're trying to circle back, right? That's my thing, is how are they going to handle that part of it? I don't know if we have any insight on that. We're completely guessing, probably. It's a unique problem. It's a good problem to have. Yeah. It's a tightrope, though, because you don't want to lose both guys in the process if you're talking about 2 guys fighting for one spot.
Right. I think you're going to do it similar, or they'll do it similar to what they're doing with the offensive line. Is just, they've got a list of guys that they want, and if they want to come in to join the class, then they'll join the class. I don't think they'll hesitate. They might tell some lower end guys on their list, hey, hold off. We're not going to take your commitment just yet, but just hold off. And, because they're fairly open about their board and what's going on to these recruits. They're not just saying, hey, we're not taking your commitment right now, and not giving them a reason why. They'll say, hey, we're not going to take your commitment because these guys are, close to a decision. We want to see how it shakes out and stuff like that. So
did we even mention Brian Robinson?
No, we didn't mention Brian Robinson.
It just popped in my head, because he's a guy that has been very deliberate with his recruiting process.
Yeah. And that's another one that could very well go Michigan's way.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he's the guy I'm thinking of, that was kind of a part of the Ohio group for a little bit there. Right. And it felt like maybe just because the other guys were dropping and he wasn't, maybe Michigan was moving away a little bit, blah, blah, blah. What if he's ready in September? Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but it's a crazy good problem to have. Yeah. Reiterate that again, I guess. But seeing that's Antoine. I think we had these conversations about Davis. He says, I don't like the way the kid Robinson, who I just mentioned from Ohio, is stringing his recruitment along. He's been to Michigan too many times. Nothing left for him to find out. We don't know what the coaches and players conversations are. And we're not on fans, or us as reporters. We're not on the kid's timeline, man. Right. Same thing happened with Davis. If he's somebody who wants to commit when he's done. That was the thing with Davis. We kept saying, you guys want him to commit in November, but if he does, he's not done. He wants to commit when he's done. No more recruiting, locked in. If that's what Robinson's doing and he's coming to your campus as much as he is, okay. It's not hurting anything, right? So he's not stringing him along. He's doing what he's allowed to do, which is take his time to make the decision he wants to make.
Right? Yeah. And a counterpoint to that too is that he's probably going to wait himself out of a spot. So,
but he knows that, like you just said, the staff's being honest with him.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right? I agree.
So he's not going to cost Michigan somebody.
No.
So if he's only potentially taking a risk for himself, okay.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I see both sides of it, but I'm not going to push a kid to commit when he's not ready.
No,
because then he takes a spot. Somebody else goes somewhere else. He decides he wasn't ready to commit anyway. He flips out. I've lost 2 players. You commit on the timeline. You're ready. If your timeline doesn't match ours, well, that's unfortunate. We wish you the best of luck. You're a great kid.
Yeah. Right. No, I mean, and there's a shot that he might not even go to Michigan anyway. I mean, he's looking at a whole bunch of other schools. The other schools are getting involved. Kentucky obviously does very well in his neck of the woods in Ohio and is a factor in his recruitment. So we'll see, a bunch of these guys that are, potential fits, aren't going to make or break a class either. So you can afford to miss on a guy like Brian Robinson, even though you've invested a lot of time in him. It's just, again, we mentioned it, this is the benefit of Michigan being so highly regarded in recruiting right now and recruiting so well, is that, you may miss out on one guy, but the next guy that comes along might be even better, more highly recruited or highly rated, and it's totally okay. So, it's a far gone, thing from what we were talking about last year where, Michigan just couldn't get a recruitment if it fell into one, essentially. So,
right.
that's in the summer, I should say.
That's such a good point, though. Again, I hate having that conversation and feeling like you're bashing the 23 class. I've said multiple times this year already, we've seen a couple dudes where we're like, oh, Jair's really good, right? I think in a couple of years, we're going to look back on that class like we do 18. But anyway, it's such a good point in terms of how many times we get to the finish line of a recruit we covered and it wasn't going Michigan's way.
Yeah.
Is it 16 guys in this class before the barbecue when they normally have 3, 4, 5, 6 dudes? Yeah, different deal. All right, we talked about recruiting. We're going to circle back to quarterback and the current quarterback for Michigan football, JJ McCarthy. I am working on an article right now. I'm hoping to have posted tomorrow or the next day from our By the Numbers series. That's something where I dive into data to make an argument. And I'm basically attacking the idea of what does JJ McCarthy have to do to be better to get Michigan to that next level, right? We're seeing the list because this is the time for preseason lists, right?
Yep.
Lots of he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. He's a potential Heisman candidate. He could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, etc. This is a different offseason for him than last year. He's healthy. He's not battling for his spot, and he is the unquestioned leader of this team. So what are we hearing about JJ's offseason? I mean, I know he's gained some weight. We could see it. The boy's he's got that football neck, man.
Yeah.
But what's JJ's offseason? How is he attacking this year?
Yeah, he looks noticeably bigger. Noticeably bigger. I think he's taken on more of a leadership. He's really kind of embraced this role of being QB1 and being the guy to lead this offense. And I think he's really embraced that. And he's kind of working to, increase his leadership role, to be more vocal and lead this offense. He's got a bunch of things he's working on, really. I mean, you're talking about, team chemistry, a greater understanding of the offense, which I think is huge. I mean, you're talking about, a year and a half with the same pretty much offensive system. So, he's got a greater understanding of that. I just think, he's on the brink of, we talk about this every year, It's like, is this the year Michigan is going to open up their passing game? Is this the year the offense becomes more dynamic? And I feel like we've said this every year for the past, 5 years, that this is going to be the year where things
Harbaugh's been here.
Right. Right. And I feel like you finally have the guy to do it. That you have a guy, you have all the tools to open things up and become more dynamic. And you've shown it on tape. I mean, I hate to reference a TCU game. However, that was a prime example of what this passing offense could look like. They were behind. So, you kind of have to involve the passing game a little more when you're behind. However, you've shown that you can open things up. The deep ball was working.
They were scoring quick, right?
Yeah.
I've looked at that game for JJ in a very positive light, and it's tough because immediately what do you hear? 2 pick sixes.
Yep.
Right. And people want to slam him for that. And I think that game was kind of what we talked about in the offseason leading up to it, of if you take the leash off JJ and you let him go, he's going to make ridiculous plays because he is a playmaker, but there is some extra risk that comes with it, with the pick sixes potentially. Right. I could get into Ronnie Bell's route on one of those, but whatever. But on the flip side of that, JJ was on the sideline that entire game, telling the team that we're going to win this game. And I've never seen Michigan stay in a game like that, except for maybe that bizarre Illinois game, however many years ago. But I mean, at this level, a big game where Michigan was behind by a bunch, they haven't had a quarterback that keeps them in it like JJ did. You can say what you did about the pick sixes, and that was part of the reason they were down, right? But you're right. We saw what the passing game could do. Ohio State selling out on the run. We saw what the passing game can do, right? So I don't know. Part of begging them to change or throw the ball more is just because I think people want to be entertained more. Like you want to see bigger plays or something, but like what they're doing is working.
Yeah.
Like running the ball is working, right?
Yeah.
But and the argument I'm trying to prove, I will follow where the data goes, but I know Moore has talked about being a little bit more creative because you've got Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and Colston Loveland and some unique weapons. So you want to be more creative and utilize them a little bit more. But does Michigan need to throw more or just more efficiently? They took the deep shots throughout the first part of the game, and between JJ overthrowing because he was trying to throw a laser and put it into a tight window and some drops. And again, we'll see what the data goes, but if they connect on a few of those, I don't know that they need to throw the ball more. They just need to be more efficient.
Yeah.
And maybe everything looks completely different, but you're right. JJ's the guy to do it. Right. And what he adds in the run game. And it's going to be interesting to see the step he takes. Year 2, full off season, healthy, etc. If he is a first round pick, Michigan probably had a really good year.
Yeah, or he had a really good year.
Yeah, at least, yeah. But can he have a really good year and Michigan doesn't?
Maybe. I mean,
I don't know.
If you follow recent trends with the offense, it probably means they're throwing the ball a lot, which probably means that they're down a lot.
All right, fair enough.
What would have happened? The wheels probably would have completely fallen off that program if they were even in that situation this year, which I don't foresee happening.
You're touching on, and I will touch it in my article tomorrow, but sneak preview, the more attempts per game JJ has, the worse his numbers get. So chicken or the egg situation, though. Is he throwing more because he's off, or is he off and that's why he's throwing more, right? We'll have to see. But yeah, I think either way, when Harbaugh first got here, the one thing I didn't think Michigan fans were going to have to worry about was quarterback. And Rudock came in as a stopgap right out the bat, had a really good year, right? Exceeded expectations, got drafted. And then it was like Wilton Spate, and before the injury is 2016, right? And then after that, it just felt like not getting certain recruits, or this guy didn't pan out or whatever. And now we're talking about JJ McCarthy, Jadyn Davis, and a bunch of 5-star guys in 2025. So the QB position is changed. Another big part of why Michigan did as well as they did last year and has a chance to be a national championship winner again this year is Blake Corum. We've guessed on a few things, and I think we've had some insight on some other things in terms of him coming back this year. But he did a very interesting interview recently, and you wrote an article about it, and I thought how you covered that and some of the things he said are not just interesting but important to talk about. So I did want to touch on Blake Corum and what he said about that injury, rehabbing, and the decision to come back.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really kind of a lot that I expected happened behind the scenes that really did happen. You know, he was going into this game against Illinois as this is his final game at Michigan Stadium, and that knee injury really just derailed his NFL aspirations for the year. I do think he'll have a an NFL career after this season, but I guess depends on what way you look at it, for good or for bad. Obviously, you never want to see a guy get injured, but Michigan unfortunately benefits from the fact that Blake Corum got hurt against Illinois and he's back this year. He would not have been back if he would not have gotten hurt against Illinois. And who knows what would have happened if he didn't. We could be talking about Heisman winner Blake Corum, and I think he would have absolutely been deserving of it. If he
maybe they beat TCU if Blake Corum.
Maybe they do.
We start getting into a very dangerous what if there.
Yeah. No, that's probably going to be one of the bigger Michigan what ifs in recent memory. We always talk about the JT was short what if, but I think this one kind of supersedes that in regards to what if Blake Corum didn't get hurt for that year,
because we know how good they were with him.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and they'll be very good this year, and hopefully, knock on wood, Blake Corum stays healthy throughout the entire year. So they'll be arguably, possibly even better than what they were last year. So, but anyway, back to the article. I think what you were referencing before, the most important part that he addressed during this interview, which is on the 33rdteam.com.
Yes.
There's a multiple part series that'll come out, but he was talking about the mental health aspect of the injury, the mental side, how he was riding this high of the year, having a really good year, and then a split second freaky thing kind of derailed what he had planned for the year. And that kind of, he admitted that, it took him into a dark place, into in his words, a deep hole, a place where he didn't, in his own words here, a place where I didn't think Blake Corum could go. And a guy that has been around Blake Corum a few times, you never see him with a frown on his face. I mean, that guy's always high energy, very positive, very outgoing. And, to even think about that part of an injury process, it's very real. Athletes go through that, that whole mental process of, not only just going through the rehab process, but trusting yourself and trusting your, whatever, in Blake's case, his knee, to, be strong and absorb hits and things like that. And I think the mental aspect, and even not just in sports, I think the aspect of taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health is huge and paramount to, not only men, but, men, women, and children. I think it's huge. So, for a guy like Blake Corum to be open and honest about his mental health and what he went through during that time, a lot of people look up to him. A lot of kids look up to him.
Absolutely.
And being that kind of role model who shows that it's okay to be open about your feelings and get the help you need to fix, whatever is going on in your life. I think that's huge, because there seems to be this big stigma around mental health that, and particularly in men, that, you're not allowed to speak about your feelings, or you're not allowed to discuss how you feel. And I think that's bad. You know, you shouldn't be in a place where you have to fight it alone in your own self. You know, you should be congratulated to talk out loud about your feelings and get help and, you know, do the things you need to make you feel better. You know, I think if you're sick, you go to the doctor. You know, if your brain is sick,
mental health is health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You go to the doctor to get it fixed. You go to the brain doctor to get it fixed. You know, obviously that's an analogy, but
know what you mean. Yeah.
The same thing goes. So, you know, going back to it, I think Blake Corum talking about the things he did is hugely important, you know, and not just for him, but like a role model perspective for others too, you know, to show that it's okay to be vulnerable and, you know, say what's on your mind and talk about, you know, what's going on in your life and in your mental.
Yeah. We're obviously a sports show, but anybody who follows us, I think, knows this is something we're both pretty passionate about for reasons we choose to be passionate about it. And I just think, you know, he talked about too, like almost like putting on this mask, because like you just said, you have an expectation of Blake Corum and the always smiling and always happy or whatever. And sometimes you think you have to keep that up because that's what people expect out of you and whatever. So for him to come out and say that, I think was a big deal. And I wanted to touch on it because the mental part is a huge part of it. Right. And that's going to translate to the field too. I've said from the beginning that in terms of, are we going to get Blake Corum back medical wise now? I mean, look at Ronnie Bell last year.
Yeah.
He was arguably quicker.
And he said the same thing. He said the exact same thing.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I that part I'm not, I don't even want to use the word worried. That's not the right word, but I think, you know, literally getting over what he lost, which was Heisman potential, like you said, coming back going for it, and then trusting your knee when you get back on the field. You know, Michigan is lucky he's back. I do think they're also lucky they have Donovan Edwards, and I think they're lucky they have CJ Stokes, a guy that's not getting talked about a ton because he was a little dinged up in spring, but very, very similar skill set to those two. And I think Michigan's probably going to spread it out a little bit more and utilize those. We've seen Benjamin Hall rising. We're excited about Cole Cabana. Kalel Mullings has moved over, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really good running back room, but it's led by Blake Corum, and Blake Corum is a leader on and off the field in just so many ways. I think Michigan fans, Ann Arbor community, everybody's just really lucky to have him. And 33rd team, right? Yeah.
Yep.
They were kind enough and sent that over to us. And I just think it was really cool of Blake to do it, of them to put it on. And I want to make sure we address it. So on that note, that's going to button up this week's episode. Again, appreciate everybody joining on. In the comments, if you're watching live, if you're listening back on Spotify, again, like, subscribe so you get notifications, and continue to follow us over at michigan.rivals.com. If you are not subscribed already, please come over and join us. We'd love to have you in our community. We say we think we have the best message board community in terms of Michigan sports, and you don't have to believe us. Our subscribers are so incredible, and they always say such great things online. So you can ask them if you don't believe us. And then, are we still running? Is the Garcia promotion still going?
No, it's done.
Oh, good. I shouldn't have asked you. I thought it was. Anyway. All right.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, never mind. Still join us, right?
No, don't let that stop you.
All right, Josh. Good talking to you as always, guys.
Right.
Appreciate everybody watching. We will see you or talk to you soon. This has been Hail to the Podcast.